Heyo adventurers! My name is Derek. This is going to be the first of many and perhaps countless videos about TTRPG design. I've been in the TTRPG industry for almost 10 years. My work has been mainly fantasy cartography. I am an illustrator, but I also write adventures. Perhaps you know of my work. Now, I have not created a system, and now that I want to do it, I want to record my process through all of this. During these game design vlogs, I am not going to pretend that I am an expert in this subject because I am not. On the other hand, I want to learn about it and I want to share everything I learn here on YouTube because maybe you are also thinking on writing your fantasy heartbreaker, just like I am now trying to do. And all the stuff that I will be covering in these videos, perhaps it's going to be useful to you. I also have to disclose that this video is going to be a little unscripted. I'm just winging it. I have some stuff written down which I am going to share in a moment, but this and perhaps many videos after this one, they're probably gonna be a little rambling, like I'm just going all over the place because I'm not really sure what I'm trying to do. But I hope to discover it, perhaps while making this video and while ruminating about all these design ideas, procedures, mechanics, and all this. Okay, so what's my background for this? I've been playing D&D and other TTRPG games for almost 20 years so far. Most of that time I've spent playing straight up D&D, but over the last 5 years I have delved into a lot of new systems, and that has caused me to add a lot of house rules to my D&D games. In the last longish D&D campaigns we ran, we were not playing D&D 5e. We were actually playing an amalgam, like a hydra of different systems. But it was mostly this, old school essentials. Old school essentials, like this version right here, it's pretty much like a rewrite of Basics and Experts D&D, what most people consider second edition. However, I changed a lot of stuff in that game, and after that we were playing this system, Shadowdark RPG, which is something we have played a lot in the last 2 years. However, from that previous experience with old school essentials, like we didn't play this as is. We made a lot of changes to this. So over time, over the past 2 years, the system we were playing was a fantasy heartbreaker, which it changed a lot. It doesn't exist codified in a single place. It's a myriad of Google Sheet documents and Word documents and links to the internet. In my head, it made sense. You know, and perhaps many GMs are like this monster of a system existed in all these places spread out across the cloud and the internet, but in my head it kind of made sense. However, it didn't really make that much sense, if I say so myself, because it was always changing. I am trying to put it all in paper and create something that's a little more static and that's ready to share to other people. Alright, so there are some things that I want to share right now that I have been thinking. Like I said, there is not much to share right now. I'm just going to go step by step. Perhaps in the next video I'll provide a roadmap of what I'm planning. But here, this game that has currently no name, I'm just calling it right now the Elven Tower Fantasy Heartbreaker, but that's really not a name. It's just, I needed something for the title of this. So what do I want to do? Well, first, this is an exercise in TTRPG system development. It is one branch of the TTRPG business that I have not yet dabbled in. I've written adventures, I've done a lot of stuff, but creating a system, that's something I want to do. Something that's like a finished product that can be placed on a storefront, I would love that. Number 2, a way to finally put all my thoughts into a single system adapted to my needs. And I say it in this way because I am aware that I am not the first to come up with their own fantasy heartbreaker. And that's crazy because I would be adding my system to a million others. I also understand that people have different styles of play, and perhaps the way I narrate my games and the way I see rules and mechanics, it can resonate with others. So this might be useful for some. And number 3, I pretty much already said this, it's a way for me to show to the world the style of games I want to narrate and play in. What that actually means will become obvious as I go with the examples and my exploration of rules and mechanics in future videos. Okay, next is brainstorming and goals for the system. This is a very short list that will become larger as I explore each topic. But for now, I have like the core tenets of what I'm looking for, the need I am trying to cover. So first is rules light, procedure heavy / is this a contradiction? Let me tell you what I think about this. When I'm thinking rules light versus rules heavy, this is what I'm thinking. Rules light would be something like this game, Into the Odd, which is like distilling D&D to the bones. Rules heavy would be something like Dungeons & Dragons 5e, Pathfinder 2e, or some other systems like Lancer for mechas, or Legend of the Five Rings for Japanese style. Those games are rules heavy. They have a lot of moving parts, especially on the character side. Now, procedure heavy, it would be something different. It would be a set of rules, a rule set, that comes into play when the characters want to do something. For example, let's say you're going to travel from point A to point B. In some games that would be just like a skill check, like in D&D, a survival check to find the way from point A to point B. Or you could have a more procedure-heavy rule set. For example, the GM rolls on a table for a random event that occurs during this trip, and then they roll for something that could happen while they rest at night. And you could even perhaps include that while they rest at the campfire at night, in the middle of the trip, some mechanic for telling stories at the campfire. Perhaps I am not explaining this well, or I am not eloquent enough to explain it, but I want to delve into that. I like small rule sets that can be optional to the system. Perhaps what I want to say is a more modular system. In D&D 5e, the subclasses are not optional. They are an integral part of the system. They cannot be removed. The game is not modular about that, or the whole spell system. It's not modular. But in other games, there are subsystems for very specific things that you can use, or you can, if you don't want to use them, you can just drop them. The game that comes to mind for this is The Burning Wheel. Now, this game is infamous because it's very complex. I would say it is very procedure heavy. The thing with The Burning Wheel is that it contains a lot of subsystems that are optional. Some people think, or they come with the misconception that it cannot be like this, but they are optional. Like, it has a subsystem for combat that you can completely ignore, or it also has a subsystem for resolving social interactions. You can ignore it if you want, and it has other things like that. Like the whole magic system here, it's just optional. Is this what I want to do? I am not sure. Perhaps for some subsystems. Next, a medieval fantasy system a la Dungeons and Dragons. So it has compatibility with my stuff. Like, for 10 years I have written adventures and supplements for medieval fantasy, for Dungeons and Dragons. And I would like all that catalog of past adventures to be able to be run in this. So I am not going to be working on a sci-fi system or a futuristic system. It's not going to be that. Next, and this goes hand in hand with the last point, an implied setting. What do I mean by that? A book such as this one, Old School Essentials, this is just rules for play. It doesn't include anything that you could say could be construed as a setting. It doesn't give you a map, doesn't give you the names of places. It's just the rules. However, there is a setting that's implied. It's a medieval fantasy, kind of like Lord of the Rings, for example. That is also the case for The Burning Wheel. It's also implied to be a medieval setting, perhaps even Victorian, maybe. That means that when I finally manage to release this, it's not going to be a setting, it's going to be a rule book with a setting implied. Now, what the setting is going to be, I am not sure at this point. It's probably going to be medieval fantasy, but maybe it's going to be high fantasy, or maybe it's going to be dark fantasy, like Dark Souls, for example. But that remains to be seen. Okay, next is dice resolution. This is an option I just right now added to the list. Since this is going to be a medieval fantasy hack, probably of BXD&D combined with many other things, I feel like the system and the style of play is pushing me to make it D20 centric. However, I also like dice pool systems, especially with the ones that work with D6s. For example, here you can see here the dice for Mouse Guard that come with the box set. A few years ago, we ran 2 or maybe 3 campaigns of Mouse Guard. We also played a Blades in the Dark and Scum and Villainy campaign. All those 2 systems also use a dice pool system with D6s, and I really like that. I gotta say that the dice math for D6 pools, it really resonates with me. However, I am not sure if that's going to work for a medieval fantasy heartbreaker. But do let me know if you think that's cool. I'll probably make a whole video about dice systems, dice pools, and the probabilities, the odds, and all that. But that's for a later video. This content is sponsored by you. Elven Tower Adventures is more than maps, stories, and quests. We're a fellowship. Your voice matters, and we want to create the best content for you. The best way to support our work is by subscribing to our Patreon page. Who knows? Perhaps our Dungeon Vault magazine could become your every game's companion. Or maybe our hundreds of maps and adventures are just what your imagination needs to take your games to the next level. Don't just play D&D, conquer it. Okay, then I have this section right here about detailed subsystems. These are just some ideas I put into this document a little earlier, some things I've been thinking about. These systems exist in other games, but not the way I like them. Perhaps I want them a little more granular, more detailed. I want more tables, I want more outcomes. Okay, so these are just some ideas I have right now of things that I want to include in the final product. Things that I want to be modular, very procedure heavy, and very granular. So that's just the way I want my games to go. But I find that no system has all these moving parts in the same book, and that's what I want to do. So first, combat. Well, that's obvious. I don't want to deviate too much from what we see in BXD&D or any flavor of D&D that you know, but combat is obviously a subsystem that's part of the game. It's probably going to be simple, lethal, and the system is going to imply with its difficulty that some fights you are supposed to try to avoid. Pretty much the style for the OSR kind of games. Next, ritual casting. By this, I mean a second subsystem for magic that is not meant for combat. I guess a good example of this would be the rituals in Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. In D&D 4e, you had these rituals that had to be cast outside of combat. I think that they had a casting time of 1 hour. They could do some crazy things with these rituals. I like that. I also like the possibility of having a secondary magic system that then you can add to some classes that are not magical. Like, I'm not really sure how that's gonna work, but I like ritual casting as a secondary magic system. Next, inventory tracking. I like very granular, very bookkeepy inventory tracking. I feel like the way it's done in games like Shadowdark, which I have right here, and Lamentations of the Flame Princess are a great starting point for what I want to do. I also created a subsystem for D&D 5e a few years ago called Dungeon Crawling with Style. Now this one is on sale at the DM's Guild, and it is like a hack of the Lamentations of the Flame Princess system combined with something I saw, I think, in Old School Essentials, but for D&D 5e. I'm probably gonna do something like that. Next, caravan supply runs. I like the idea of characters moving from place to place. They usually escort caravans from one place to the next, and they do all kinds of things. However, in the medieval world, it would make sense to move merchandise or stuff from one place to another to sell it. There was this subsystem I saw in a book, can't remember which one at this moment, that led me to start to write a subsystem for trading goods across different cities. You would do like a short market research and then buy some parcels of, let's say, cotton, and then start on your adventures. You go to the next town or city and then see if you can sell the cotton there. And if the price was good, then you sell it. If it was not good, then you could perhaps sell it at a loss. Or if you want, you can just go on to the next town. The farther you go, the higher is the probability that you can fetch a better price. Maybe this subsystem is not for everyone, but for some reason it resonates with my mind that you just do a market research, buy 7 parcels of rice, and then start moving across the country while you do dungeon crawling and saving the kingdom and whatever, but you also have there all the rice that you want to sell. Maybe this is just crazy me, autistic me, crafting systems, but I really like this. However, also the caravan rules would have detailed information for how much stuff you can carry in your caravan, how much it costs to feed the animals, how much it costs to feed your retainers and the party. And I had this Google sheet that perhaps can be simplified in some way. This is for a future video, where you could just input how many people are in the caravan, the characters, the retainers too, and animals like horses and mules and stuff like that. So you input everything that's in there, and you input how fast you are moving across the world, and it calculated the cost for daily travel. So now you have like a rent. If you're in a city, the Google Sheet would calculate how much it costs to house all these people and animals in a barn and a tavern. And if you're moving across the world, then it tells you how much it costs for the supplies for the caravan. This level of bookkeeping is not for everyone, but I really like that in my games. It felt like a constant challenge to make money, because all this costs money. So I really like that, and I think it was a little too complex the way I wrote it. I think it can be simplified. Or maybe this is where I can go all in, procedure heavy, and just craft something crazy to calculate how much it costs to move 12 people and 4 animals from point A to point B. Maybe there is an audience for this craziness out there, but I like it. Next, social interaction mechanics. Now, I know this is a doozy because people in general don't like this. In D&D, you just have like 3 skill checks, no? Like it's persuasion, intimidation, and maybe the other is like fooling someone into believing deception. I think that's the name of the skill. Now, for a game that has 3 core pillars, combat, exploration, and social interactions, it has a lot of rules for combat. This is for D&D 5e. It has very little rules for exploration. You can solve this when you use a system like an OSR clone like Shadowdark RPG or Old School Essentials. And then you have social interactions. They don't have many rules for that. It's just the skill checks. You can make the argument that the social part of the game occurs at the table, at the level of the players interacting among themselves and the GM. And I think that's fair, okay? To each their own. However, I would really like to have an optional modular subsystem for social resolution. Something similar to what they have here in Burning Wheel. In here, the subsystem is named Duel of Wits, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think it lends itself as is for D&D because the stats are different. It's all different. And this is also a D6 pool system, so it's not compatible with D&D, but I dream of a way to integrate something like that to D&D. Perhaps this is just a pipe dream. I don't know at this point. And then downtime stuff. I love downtime stuff. However, I find that in most systems, it's kind of glossed over. Like for example, here in Shadowdark RPG, you have a table for carousing results. You go and just spend all your money like Conan the Barbarian, and then something crazy happens. And I like that. However, it's a D20 table, and all players have to roll on that. You are expected to do that perhaps once every level. So by the time you are level 3, all of the options at the table have already come up. And now it's a stale system because there are just too few options. Back in the day when I was hacking my fantasy Heartbreaker, I wrote a series of concatenated tables that created perhaps thousands of different results. I plan to build on that for this. The downtime stuff is going to be very procedure heavy. Perhaps too granular for most, but it is what it is. I mean, it's what I want to do. However, if during the process of making these videos, it becomes too unwieldy, well, I might just drop it. But at this point, I don't know. Okay, to finish this video, I would just like to show you, this is a Google Sheets document. All right, to end this video, I would just like to show you some of the stuff I was working on a few years ago. Now, this is for my home game. This was not intended for publication. We were doing an Into the Odd hack. That's this book. It was hacked with Old School Essentials, this book. And I also added a ton of stuff from different games. It was just crazy. And I created this index, which has some extra classes, some alternate rules for spell casting, for summoning spells. Some of these are websites, which I do not own. Like, this was just for my home game, so I would have to create a lot of stuff for this. No, divine spell casting, some god disapproval table from Chartopia. Like I said, this is not all of my creation. Some new skills. We were playing in the setting of ultraviolet grasslands, so this wasn't even medieval fantasy all the way. It was kinda sci-fi-ish. We had a campaign calendar. It's in Spanish, but because we're in Mexico. I had this travel procedure that measured travel in weeks, as it's expected for that setting. We had some equipment and then some class tables, which I created. I guess this was for a style like Old School Essentials, where you have race as class, which I am not sure if I am going to do that or not. Some XP triggers, rules for scars. And then I had this is the Google Sheet that I spoke about earlier that calculates how much. So for example, for 3 people and 1 animal and 2 mech contraptions, because they had like 2 mechanical carts. I'm kind of stumbled because I hadn't opened this document in like 2 years, so I'm not really sure how to read it. But I think it cost 82 silver pieces per day for this to work. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it like this. Like I'm just showing some stuff I did in the past. Then I had some classes. For example, here the Bard, the Ogre as class, an Ogre Witch also as a class. Some stuff that I don't even know what this is. I think I was just making like a study of how these saves work in BXD&D, but not with the 5 traditional BX saves, but with Fortitude, Reflexes, and Will as they used in D&D 4E. Like I didn't even know what I was doing back then, and I don't think I will use all of this as a base for what I want to do right now. It's just the background. So I know that this video has been a lot of rambling. Like I said at the beginning, I am not sure at this point what I'm doing, but of what I am sure is I will be sharing my process of reviewing rules, ruminating about mechanics, and crafting what I think is going to be the perfect fantasy heartbreaker, at least for my games and perhaps for your game too. And even if you do not agree with my designed choices, maybe the process of making all these game design vlogs might be useful for you to go through the same process and craft your own game that is adapted to your needs. Alright, I guess that's it for today. Thank you for watching. My name is Derek and this is Elven Tower.